I was taking my dad to all of his doctor visits. I was sitting in the waiting room one day and I noticed other grown children that were about my age, kind of doing the same thing I was doing. And I became curious about them. And I looked up online about support groups for caregivers. And the funny thing about that was I never realized I was a caregiver. I didn't know what I was doing even had a name. I just thought I was a daughter taking care of her parents. But I didn't realize that we were called a caregiver or caretaker. So when I Googled it, I wasn't even sure what to put in the search bar. But when I put in caregiver, all these things showed up, all these support groups showed up. And I joined a few of them and I started making friends with people that were caregivers like me. And I found a common thread and it was a relief, such a relief. Just like when I found AlzAuthors. That's how I found AlzAuthors. I was desperate for connection of any kind because caregiving is such a lonely, emotional journey. And you really have to have that. Does anybody out there know what I'm feeling? Do they know what I'm going through? What is everybody else going through? Is it normal what I'm feeling? There's so many things that you're just floundering because none of us know how to do this. There's no set of instructions to know how to do this. And, back then there wasn't a lot of books out there either. Nobody really talked about it. It was just kind of a role we all assumed. And it was just kind of part of life, but nobody really, said much about it. No, not like they do now, especially with AlzAuthors. It's just, it's such a treasure to see all the people that have written about their own stories.
Welcome to the AlzAuthors podcast. We're so glad you found us. We're the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. I'm Mary Ann Shuko, a registered nurse, author, and dementia daughter.
And I'm Christy Byrne-Yates, a licensed educational psychologist, dementia daughter, ALZ author, and coach focused on the sandwich generation. Please join us for bi-weekly episodes with our authors as we talk about their dementia journeys, sharing intimate details and painfully obtained knowledge to help others currently on that path.
We hope these stories offer you comfort and support as we strive to break the silence and stigma surrounding a dementia diagnosis.
May one of our authors speak to your experience.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hi, I'm Jean Lee of AlzAuthors, the author of Alzheimer's Daughter. When I was caring for my mom and dad with dementia and Alzheimer's, I looked for written resources to answer my questions and advise me on how to be the best caregiver. Unfortunately, I didn't find much in my local library or bookstore, and the internet was an overwhelming jungle of information I didn't have time to explore. But today, busy caregivers can find the quality resources they need at AlzAuthors.com. Books are categorized by relationship and type of dementia, as well as genre. You will find a helpful title in just minutes using our search tool. So, after the podcast, take a few minutes to peruse our book collection at alzauthors.com/books. Remember, you are not alone.
Hello and welcome to AlzAuthors Books and Chit Chat with Aging and Amazing. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. I'm Mary Ann Shuko, a founder and manager of AlzAuthors, the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia from personal experience to light the way for others. And I'm the author of Blue Hydrangeas, an Alzheimer's love story. I'd like to introduce some of the members of our team who are with us today. Christy Byrne-Yates. She is the author of Building a Legacy of Love, Thriving in the Sandwich Generation. She is my podcast co-host and producer and co-moderating this event. We also have Vicki Tapia here today, a founder of AlzAuthors and author of Somebody Stole My Iron, a family memoir of dementia. And I believe we have some folks from Aging and Amazing. Is that right, Daisy?
Yes, both myself and Kate, one of our new colleagues, are in this call.
Oh, that's wonderful. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
All right. Our author today is Susan Landeis, author of In Search of Rainbows, her memoir of caring for her mother with Lewy Body Dementia. Susan endured a difficult relationship with her mom for most of her life, leading to years of estrangement. When her mother's health declined, she valiantly took on the role of caregiver daughter and discovered a wealth of blessings. Susan is a member of our management team, serving as graphic design editor for our social media and website, LinkedIn manager, and curator of our custom caregiver collections project. Welcome to Books and Chit Chat, Susan.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and I'm very happy to talk about your book, which is really lovely. I read it and I marked up all kinds of different sections that we can talk about. But let's get started by you telling us about your dementia journey and maybe a little bit about your background with your mom and the type of relationship you had with her.
Sure. My mother had Parkinson's disease and later on was diagnosed with Lewy Body Dementia. When I started my caregiving journey, I was in my mid-40s. I worked full-time in health information management. I had recently become a grandmother and I was soon to become an empty nester. So my life was already going through all kinds of things. My mother and I had been estranged for many years. Throughout my lifetime, she had abandoned me, rejected me, and I left home at the age of 16. I married at 19, and my husband and I moved several states away just to put distance between us. And after that, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And my dad decided that he wanted to retire and they wanted to move a little bit closer to where we were. My brother and I, which was my only sibling, lived in the Denver, Colorado area. And he wanted to be closer to us, but he didn't want to live in the big city. So they decided to move to an assisted living community about 3 hours away, just across the Nebraska-Colorado border. So as she was going through her Parkinson's, things slowly, we kind of put our walls down and we slowly got reacquainted again. Things weren't perfect, but we started seeing each other more. My dad and I had always been close, but because of my mother, we never saw each other very often. When my mother's dementia, after she was actually diagnosed with dementia, we didn't know it was Lewy body yet. We just knew it was dementia that was related to her Parkinson's. Things started to go downhill with her, and my father started to get his own healthcare issues. One day it snowballed, and my mother had some kind of a manic episode. My dad was suffering from some serious health issues of his own, which included heart disease and diabetes. He had stopped going to the doctor because he didn't want to leave my mother alone. Even though they lived in an assisted living community, he still was pretty much caring for her. They lived in the independent side. When my mother, well, when she had her episode, it was clear that she could not go back to the assisted living community where they lived. They did not care for people with cognitive issues, so they did not allow her to come back after she was hospitalized. So she had to go to a memory care facility. My brother, it was clear he did not want to help at all. He did not want to become involved with caregiving. So the whole thing fell on me. So I moved both my parents to Colorado to be near me. I had to put my mother in a memory care facility, and I brought my dad home with me until I could figure out his issues. And I had to make a choice between my full-time job and caregiving. So I took a leap of faith and became my parents' caregiver.
Wow, that's just so much. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that you made the decision to go ahead and do that, to become your parents' caregiver, given the strife. So I really admire that. That's
Thank you. It
that's a
was a
lot.
difficult decision. It was something I struggled with the emotional part of it every single day
Yeah.
that I cared for her. And, with her dementia, it was it was an extraordinary gift. She became a whole different person. The dementia changed her, and she let her guard down. Her walls came down. Through much of her life, she suffered from depression. She had mood swings. She was very critical of others, not approachable at all. But the dementia made her, it's like she forgot all the things that made her so unhappy in the first place, and a whole new character emerged. And we all of a sudden developed this unexpected relationship and a closer bond. And we found forgiveness, we found peace, we found so much before she passed away. And that was an extraordinary gift that I had been given. And I wanted to share my book, just that healing journey, because I know that there are so many out there that deal with family dynamics, and it doesn't get talked about very often. And I thought, if somebody could just find their story in the pages of my own book, it would validate their own journey, and it would help them to have hope and find peace and forgiveness as well.
Wow, that's such a gift. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your brother? Because I think we talked before, and you told me that your brother was like the favored child, where you were
Well,
not.
he and my mother had a very different relationship than my mother and I. I had another brother before I was born. He died in childbirth. He was born much too early. My mother took some medication that she had an allergic reaction to, and she blamed herself and blamed it on that. But in 1961, when my older brother was born, when a child was born too soon, there wasn't much hope. So after she lost that child, his name was Jason, she never really fully recovered. She also had a difficult childhood, and I think that accounted for a lot of her depression. But anyway, I still don't know why she favored my brother over me. My brother was almost 6 years younger than me. And I was born probably about a year after my older brother Jason was born. And I don't think that she really recovered from losing that child. And during that same time, she also lost her father. So she had a lot of grief to contend with. And it may have affected, I'm just guessing, but it may have affected our relationship as well.
Sure.
Yeah, these family dynamics, they can be so deep-rooted in these dementia situations. It just kind of brings everything to a head.
It does.
We hear a lot about that in a lot of the books and with a lot of the authors. For one reason or another, there's some kind of family strife, and either people come together in dementia or they stay away.
Right.
So I was curious, I don't, Marianne, you probably have a lot of great questions. I'm so intrigued by this though, Susan. You're sharing so much really, personal and vulnerable information. So first of all, thank you for that. And I think what you just said a few minutes ago about sharing this story so that others can maybe see themselves in that pages. That's so powerful because there's a people can go a lot of ways with this, and there may be shame and regret and guilt and resentment and all of these things. And so you opening that door and then also being able to share the story of the gifts that came from it is just so beautiful and powerful and hopeful for folks. So thank you.
Thank you.
So because you were estranged from your mom and weren't in contact with her, but still with your dad, was he telling you about signs that he saw that there were issues, or how did you come to know about the extent of her, the Parkinson's or the dementia? What are some of the things how did you stay abreast of that, or did you?
My dad and I, we always had a closer relationship. We always kept in touch. He always made sure that he kept in touch with me, either by phone, by letter, somehow. Um, Many times he called me in secret without my mother knowing. Sometimes, especially later on, they both got on the phone. It wasn't always pleasant, but there was always, that dynamic there when she would get difficult. But he would always let me know what was going on. I think he knew that he could rely on me. My brother, not so much. He was kind of more, he kept to himself. He was very involved in his career, his life. He didn't really get involved with family much. And the more I tried to stay away, I think the more my dad tried to pull me back in because he really, I was always the one that he came to whenever there was a problem or something that he needed to discuss because she could be very difficult with him as well. He was just a little bit more passive about it. So he kind of leaned on me in that way.
Yeah, yeah, got that. Yeah.
So how did you come to write this book?
This book was a healing journey for me. There was so much that I had learned about my mother's life, my own self as well. There were so many pieces of myself that I really had to discover. I always thought that there was something wrong with me, that my mother couldn't love me the way that she loved my brother. And I always thought that somehow I was flawed until one day I figured out it's not me, it's her. There's something wrong. She's broken. And she was always a mystery to me. I never really knew who this woman was outside of being my mother. She was just a person that made my life miserable for most of my life. And after we had this extraordinary gift and she passed away, the grief was horrible. It was gut wrenching because I had lost her all over again. I had lost her, I had found her, and then I had lost her for good. And so many feelings of abandonment came back. And I really had to pick up those pieces. And just to heal, I had to find out who she was. What I needed answers, but she wasn't there anymore. So there was a trip involved about a year after she died. My dad and my son went back to Bismarck, North Dakota, where I was born and raised, and where my parents had lived. And I did, in a week's time, I had discovered so much about my mother. I went back to family members. I asked them, tell me what she was like. I need to know. I need to know the story of the day my brother died. I need to know who she was, how things began with her. And we were never close with her side of the family. They had a very turbulent relationship as well. She had several other brothers and sisters, and I didn't really know who they were. because we never saw them much. When I was young, I remember them fighting all the time, and we just kind of kept our distance. But I needed to talk to these people. I needed to know, I needed answers from them. What happened? Who was she? Why was she like this? And the more I discovered from them, the more I learned, and the more I could fit these pieces together, almost like puzzle pieces. And they gave me answers to myself as well. And, we really did come full circle at the end of her life and beyond that. And it really helped me understand my relationships with people, the way that I felt about myself and others. And some of the lessons that I learned will always be with me for the rest of my life. I've always learned to look a little deeper when it comes to my relationships with people, no matter who they are. There's always something underneath. When they treat you poorly, a lot of times it's not even about you. It's really something that's going on with them. There's another layer that we don't see. And it's true, everybody is fighting a battle that we know nothing about. So it has just taught me more about forgiveness, about looking a little deeper, and about understanding others than I ever could have gotten otherwise if I had not chosen to become my parents' caregiver.
Yeah. We had a question in the chat from Malika Moore of Aging and Amazing, and she asked, did you struggle with any guilt when sharing your experience with your mother growing up and then caregiving?
I think guilt was there because a lot of times I loved her, I hated her. I never really knew what I was feeling from day to day, especially just being a dementia person. Her moods changed constantly. One day we would be really great, and the next day she would have a bad day, and she would start hurling insults at me. She would hurt my feelings, and I would have to keep saying, this is just her disease. This is just her disease. It's not me. It's not me. But, sometimes I would go home and just think, why did I do this? Why did I get involved with them again? I was doing so well. I had moved so far away. I had removed them from my life. And now all of a sudden they were back again. And yeah, there was guilt there, amongst other things. There was definitely one of those emotions.
For sure. Yeah.
How did you come up with the title for the book?
In Search of Rainbows was inspired by, I was trying, when I wrote the book, I was always looking for that silver lining every day. There was something I had to find positive about that day. And that's something that literally kept me going, was looking for anything positive, anything. I don't care what it was. I woke up healthy that morning. It was a beautiful sunset, anything at all. And one day I was sitting in a doctor's office reading a magazine while my dad was in with the doctor. And I was reading something about, I can't remember what it was, but it was a phrase about a rainbow, and something clicked. And then when I went home that night, there was a thunderstorm. And I was thinking again about the title. And I looked up and there was a rainbow outside the sky. And I thought, that's it, In Search of Rainbows. It just kind of came to me that way. And it just kind of described everything I was feeling. So the title stuck.
That's great. It's got so much significance, and it's really beautiful and relatable. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
So your mother had Parkinson's and then was later diagnosed with Lewy Body Dementia. And how did those kind of go together? That's a lot. So she had a lot going on. How did those sort of intersect, and how did that impact your caregiving?
Well, at first it was Parkinson's disease, and she had the shaking, the things like that. There was always something underlying with that we could never put our finger on. Just a couple of years later, she started to show signs of dementia. But it was different. When I had to put her in the memory care facility, she had a different doctor that said, she has Lewy body dementia. Did you know that? And I said, no. What is it? I had never heard of Lewy body dementia.
Right.
So I did a lot of research on it. I had to understand, what is this? I had to understand what she was going through and what she had. And the funny thing about that is, when I learned the intensity behind Lewy body dementia, and also the complications with that, I also learned that oftentimes with Lewy body dementia, it can mimic other things like mental health illnesses and things like that. And it got me thinking, how long had she actually had this? Um, she she was diagnosed with Parkinson's and later on dementia in her late 60s. But I can pinpoint back into her 40s when she started having bizarre mood swings, and sometimes her behavior just didn't make any sense at all. And I really had to think about that. How long had she actually had this?
Yeah. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about Lewy body dementia? Because we talk a lot about Alzheimer's. It's probably the one that comprises the biggest group of dementias, dementia being the overall umbrella term. And then Alzheimer's tends to be the one that is most prevalent, but there are different kinds. And Lewy body dementia, it is different. So can you maybe shed some light on that?
Sure. Lewy body dementia is different. There's Lewy body, it's with Lewy bodies, and then there's another one that is Parkinson's dementia. Lewy body dementia, Robin Williams was another one. The late Robin Williams had that. And I've read a lot about his story, and I see a lot of similarities with my mother. They can be really happy and on top of the world one day, and the next day it's like they just literally crash. I mean, they're, like my mother, she could be in such a dark place that you couldn't reach her. I knew that she suffered from depression, but again, now that I look back, was it really depression? What was going on? It was like she knew somewhere underneath all that, she knew there was something wrong. And sometimes out of the blue, she would just call me and say, can you ever forgive me? I'm really sorry. And then the next day she would just go crazy again and just, call me names and just make me feel really horrible. And it's like, who are you? Lewy body is really, it's like a mental illness almost. I mean, it affects the brain much differently, I think, than typical Alzheimer's does.
I mean, it can come with sort of hallucinations.
Yeah.
And then what you're describing, like even with Robin Williams, that sort of almost bipolar sort of constitution, right? Manic depression, we used to call it, now bipolar disorder, that kind of mood swinging back and forth. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And she actually tried to take her life twice.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
When I was a teenager, once when I was 11, and another time when I was either 12 or 13. She tried to commit suicide again. And that was really something that I always thought, maybe it's my fault because we don't get along. I mean, it's a lot for a child to go through. When I look back, thinking your own mother doesn't want to live. Is it because of me? Doesn't she want to live because of me?
Right.
My brother went through that, of course, with me. He was much younger than me. But he's never talked about it with me. And I don't think he's really talked about it with anybody. But my mother always favored him. And I think just the way that it affected him must have affected him very differently than it did for me.
Sure.
Just because our relationships with our mother were so different.
Right.
How did your brother feel about the book?
He doesn't know.
Oh.
We are still not that close. We do talk, but it might be once or twice a year. I see him maybe once every couple of years. We talk about my dad's uh, situations with caregiving. He still doesn't have anything to do with the caregiving role. But if something bad happens, something I feel I need to share with him, I will call him and tell him. But I have never told him about the book. I figured that if he ever does find out about the book, I hope he does, but I'm not going to tell him. It's just something I feel that if he does find it, he can ask me about it, but he doesn't know.
It's interesting. You talked about family dynamics and everything, and you are explaining so clearly what is at play a lot of times in families, and that is you may be a brother, sister, sisters, brothers, whatever combination of siblings you might have, and there's this belief that we all had the same childhood, and yet we may have lived in the same house with the same parents, and we had different childhoods because we're unique individuals and our relationships to each other are unique and with our parents. So you're pointing out something that I think is often overlooked, and so sometimes in families people feel they're not seen and heard because their experience isn't validated by the other. The others are saying it didn't happen like that, didn't happen like that for me. And it probably didn't, because we're all very different. So you and your brother had very different childhoods, all in the same place with the same people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that can cause, I think, some strife later on with caregiving, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so you're still a caregiver now with your dad.
I certainly am. He's 89 years old. He's slowing down, and we have kind of turned a corner, I guess. I mean, he's still doing well, but his health is deteriorating further yet. I have been a caregiver now for 16 years, so it's going to be much, much different when I don't have that anymore. And it's really, and it's still a gift to me. It really is. When my mother was alive, my dad and I couldn't really have a close bond. My mother wouldn't allow it. It was almost like she was jealous of our relationship. She always wanted to push me out of the way. But when she was gone, my dad and I also developed a new relationship because because my mother wasn't there to put a wedge between us and get angry about it. So it's a beautiful thing right now with us. It's really, we're very close.
And he's close to your son as well.
Yes, yeah. He's always been a family man. He loves both of his kids. He doesn't play favorites, and he knows the situation between us, but he tries not to get involved.
And how did he read your book, and what did he think?
My dad, yes, he did. I was afraid for him to read it. I really was. Before I published it, I let him read it, and I wasn't sure because it was so personal. And after he read it, he was very quiet. And I said, "Well, Dad, what did you think about it? And do you think I should publish it?" Because I was really afraid to do that, with all the personal family things in there. And he says, "Well, it's a good book." I said, "Well, do you think I should publish it?" He really wasn't being clear with me. And he says, "Well, if you want to." And I thought, okay, he's not going to really tell me yes or no. And I know that now that I'm, making it more public and that we're turning this into more of a really good thing for caregivers, he's more on board with it now. And now he tells me he's proud of me. But at first he was like, "Really going to put that out there?" Like, yep.
Yeah, I think that many of us don't have the luxury of sharing the book with the parent and asking them what they think. I know you didn't, Christy, and Jean, and neither did Vicky, that are here today. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah, walking through all of that is a lot. I don't know, Susan, did you have any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
Oh,
question?
oh, Marianne, you were talking about
About,
having,
yeah, that a lot of us, when we published the books, the parents had passed, so
right.
they didn't read the book. They didn't have any kind of a say in what was going to be put out there. And there's just kind of a unique thing that you had that opportunity to ask him his opinion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I did. I
Yeah.
mean, because I almost felt like, am I going behind their backs?
Hmm.
Right.
You
Hmm.
know, and I mean, when I first told him about the idea of, hey, I think I'm going to write about this, he just kind of went, oh, okay. I don't think he really got the gist of what I was going to write about. I think he just thought, okay, write about the caregiving journey and all is good. But I don't think he thought that I would actually put that much personal information in there. And maybe I really, when I first started writing the book, I'm not even sure that I knew exactly how the book was going to end or how I was even going to write it. I just started writing one day, and I had kept a lot of journals. I had kept a lot of notes, just because this whole journey was so profound to me. And I just thought, I'm just going to start writing. And, it took me about a year to write my book, maybe a little more. But I just took everything from memory and everything from my notes and I just put it down. And, the first time I read it, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And I made some changes and I made some tweaks. And, you know, the best advice somebody told me, if you write a memoir, be honest, be totally honest, whether it's about yourself, about others, but just be brutally honest. And I was. I put it all out there and I thought it just felt right. And now when I recently reread my book. I hadn't read it since it was published almost 6 years ago. And I was surprised when I read it and I thought, where did those words come from? Were those words really in my head? And it's amazing because I'm still amazed when I read my own book. It's crazy, but it also tells me how far I've come since that time.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a question, but I see that we have another in the chat that is probably a really good one here. What tips do you have to, or would you offer to folks to navigate the types of family situations in order to maintain your mental health? I mean, what now where you are now, because you've come through this so like just a shining star, and you can look back on this now. So, in regards to those complicated dynamics, what tips would you offer listeners or people about navigating those difficult family dynamics, like your brother, your father, your mother?
Um, I think that's really it's going to be different for everybody. Um, but I think the biggest thing is you got to be true to yourself because if you're not, it's just not going to work. Um, I had to swallow a lot of stuff when I decided to become my parents' caregiver. My brother's rejection of not wanting to become involved, um, my parents asking me to help them after all this time. There were so many things that I had to consider, but I just kind of went with my gut. What felt right? Could I live with myself if I didn't? What happens? And I still ask myself, what would have happened if I would have said no? Um, but again, it's something that you really can you do this? Can you handle this? And I think communication is key. Communication, you've got to communicate. But sometimes the way that you want to communicate isn't possible because I know with my brother, oh, I begged him, can you please help me? I can't do this alone. And each and every time he would shut me down.
Mm,
I know I tried to have a meeting with him not long before my mother actually went into hospice. And I invited him over and he slammed out of the door and he just said, "You signed up for this. I didn't." And then he
Oh,
wouldn't
wow.
speak to me for months after that. And it really became one of those things that I just had to accept. I thought, okay, I'm done pushing him. I'm done begging him. Either he's going to help me or he's not going to help me. And even to this day, I wish that he would, but I have just come to accept that peace is more important than trying to ask him and beg him to help me. So I have learned ways to help myself, to help my dad, and at the time my mother. And I learned along the way. I learned every day. I'm still learning. I had no idea how to be a caregiver. I had no idea what I was even dealing with, but every single day was a learning experience. And, that was something that kept me going too. I just wanted to keep learning. I wanted to do the best that I could. I took my role very seriously, and I still do. But you can't force somebody to be on board with you if they're not willing to do it. And if peace is your goal, definitely go for that. And just accept that it's probably never going to happen. So,
Well, and I think that that's wise because, what I hear from other folks who are like you, advocates for caregivers or people who are helping caregivers is, forcing someone who doesn't want to be involved isn't going to yield the outcome you think it's going to yield, right? It's like it might even give you more work in the long run because you might have to untangle some things.
exactly. Yes, it
Yeah,
causes a lot more stress. It
yeah,
really does. And not just for you, but for them. And I think it almost becomes to the point where you're fighting. There's that resentment. They
yeah,
have their
yeah,
reasons why they don't want to get involved. And, of course, you have your reasons for saying, please help me.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
if it's not going to happen, it can't be forced. And if they think that they are being forced, then there's a whole nother dynamic involved,
right.
which is never a pleasant one.
Right, right. And some people can do this kind of work, and other people just aren't built for that sometimes.
It's very
I don't,
true.
I don't know how you've experienced that in your work, also with other caregivers, if you've seen that.
I have. I mean, even when I look at my brother, I couldn't imagine him being a caregiver because he just doesn't have that kind of compassion. He's always kind of been more, um, what's a kind word, more into himself. He's not ever really been somebody who would offer to help and would not rise to the occasion if asked to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm looking at some of the reviews you've gotten on Amazon, all these 5-star reviews, fantastic. But what are you hearing from readers? What have you heard people say? Have people written to you and talked to you, and what do they say?
I have gotten some very nice reviews. And every time I hear something that, you've given me hope, I've taken strength from your story, it helps me feel validated. It makes me thankful that I was so personal in my book, that I shared all of these painful things that even now it's hard to talk about. But it makes me feel very happy that I did that. And I always think, I've always had this feeling that my mother was somehow involved with the writing of my book because she was
Mm,
passed by that time. But yet I felt her presence very strongly when I was writing this book. And as I said, when I look back at this book and I started reading it again, I could still feel that. And I hope that wherever my mother is now, that she is looking down and she's glad that I shared our story to help others.
Mhm.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. We have other books too in the collection that are about people who have had similar relationships that were healed through a dementia journey, which doesn't even sound possible. It sounds far-fetched. How could that happen? But there is some kind of magic to it, I think.
There absolutely is, and I think we are all where we're supposed to be at any given time. I truly believe that. And I don't think that this happened by accident or that it was a coincidence. We're all affected by the choices that we make. Every day we make choices, and they all lead to different paths in our life. This particular one took me down a path of forgiveness and healing. And had I not made that choice long ago, I wouldn't be here where I am now.
Right.
I would still be struggling with a lot of things from my past.
That's so true. And
Yeah.
did you seek out any kind of like formal counseling or anything like that to help with that?
When I was, well, actually, when I was 15, we were supposed to go to family counseling. We went to a few sessions, and my mother decided that she was not the problem. The rest of us were. So when I was that age, I started having anxiety attacks in school. And these panic attacks almost were debilitating. And just from her neglecting, her abandoning me. So I decided to stay in counseling by myself. So this therapist became my lifeline. She helped me through so much. And when I was 16, I became an emancipated adult. And she helped me go through the courts. She helped me go through all the channels that I needed to become an adult at the age of 16. She literally saved my life. And later on, after I became a mother, I always had this fear that what if I become her? What if I become just like her? I had a son and a daughter. And when they were quite young, I was probably, mid 20s maybe, I decided to seek therapy again, counseling. And again, it was a very healing thing. I was a much different person during that time. I was now a mother myself. And there was a lot of things that came up from, just my own mother and my comparison to her, that I really wanted to make sure that I could be the best parent that I could. And I think later on, it also enabled me to be the best daughter that I could when my parents needed me years later.
Mm-hmm. And what was your mother like as a grandmother?
She didn't have much to do with my kids when they were little. We didn't see each other much. My dad called them by phone, and now he's a wonderful grandpa. He loves children. And but my mother, I think she was actually going through, or maybe the beginning part of Lewy body dementia by the time my son was born. My son is the oldest, and she was, let's see, she was in her early 40s when he was born. And she was already showing just very strange behavior. I never asked her to babysit because I didn't really trust her. But yeah, by the time we left, they lived in North Dakota, we lived in Colorado. So we didn't see him very often. So sadly, they didn't have much of a relationship with her.
That's too bad. Earlier in the discussion, you talked about giving up your job, your career. And you write in the book that when you quit working to care for your parents, everything about my life changed. Before long, I started to miss my job, my coworkers, and my professional life, and soon my so-called friends who promised to keep in touch stopped calling. Can you talk about that dynamic and the isolation that came with that?
Yeah, that was a really transitional time for me. I really felt the impact, the shift of how my life was changing. My brother was still going full steam ahead on his career. I had opted to be the caregiver and stop working. There was all kinds of things I had to worry about. I felt that I had lost my support group, my friends, my social life. I was in my 40s. I should have been going out for happy hour after work. I should have been going to parties. I should have been going out with my friends, doing social things that all of a sudden I couldn't do. And none of my friends understood because they didn't know what caregiving entailed. A few of them told me that, oh, you're so lucky, you can just stay home and care for your parents. Well, luck doesn't have anything to do with it. You know, when you work, you work 9 to 5, you punch out, you're done. Caregiving is 24/7. You're never done, ever. It's like you're on a hamster wheel. And none of them understood where I was coming from. They didn't understand. They were clueless. And pretty soon we had nothing in common anymore. And we eventually lost contact. So, it's strange. When I was taking my dad to all of his doctor visits, I was sitting in the waiting room one day and I noticed other grown children that were about my age, kind of doing the same thing I was doing. And I became curious about them. And I looked up online about support groups for caregivers. And the funny thing about that was I never realized I was a caregiver. I didn't know what I was doing even had a name. I just thought I was a daughter taking care of her parents. But I didn't realize that we were called a caregiver or caretaker. So when I Googled it, I wasn't even sure what to put in the search bar. But when I put in caregiver, all these things showed up. All these support groups showed up. And I joined a few of them, and I started making friends with people that were caregivers like me. And I found a common thread, and it was a relief. Such a relief. Just like when I found AlzAuthors. That's how I found AlzAuthors. I was desperate for connection of any kind, because caregiving is such a lonely, emotional journey, and you really have to have that. Does anybody out there know what I'm feeling? Do they know what I'm going through? What is everybody else going through? Is it normal what I'm feeling? There's so many things that you're just floundering because none of us know how to do this. There's no, there's no set of instructions to know how to do this. And, back then there wasn't a lot of books out there either. Nobody really talked about it. It was just kind of a role we all assumed. And it was just kind of part of life, but nobody really, said much about it. No, not like they do now, especially with AlzAuthors. It's just, it's such a treasure to see all the people that have written about their own stories.
So oh my gosh, not knowing you're a caregiver, that is like, I hear that so often that people just don't, well, no, they don't live with me. So I'm like, are you doing this? Are you doing this? It's like, there's so much that we do. And then that feeling that you had too, I think I hear this almost universally from folks when you find a support group. And I know I experienced this too, Susan, for sure. It's like, there's a place where I can just be honest about how I'm feeling. No one's going to judge me if I say something like, I just wish it was over. No one's going to say, oh my God, you're a terrible daughter. They're going to say, yeah, we get that. And then if you said that to your friend at coffee at Starbucks, they'd be like horrified.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not that I mean anything horrible, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's just, you get to a place where you're with people who understand what you might be thinking and feeling. And that's and that's don't
huge.
judge you.
It's huge.
Oh, huge.
Yeah. And it validates how you're feeling.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have the good days, you have the bad days, you have the horrible, worst days that you just want to just never think about again. But, even telling my husband, I'm sorry, but, he would sympathize with me, but he wouldn't really get it because he wasn't really in that role. He would support me, but he wasn't in that role. So just talking to other people that are actually in that role is just so healing, and just so wonderful to know that there are others out there. You're not the only one. And again, it sends that message of, hey, you're not alone out there. It's just a lifeline.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Susan?
Malika did say, thank you for being courageous and boldly sharing your story. And I can't echo that enough. That's such a great
thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hearing my story.
Oh, yeah.
Can you read us something from your book?
I can. I can. My life experience as a family caregiver was and still is the single most challenging chapter in my life. Caring for someone who doesn't necessarily care for you is a bag of mixed emotions that I struggled with every single day. It left me with a very difficult choice to make. I could either turn my back on the situation or take the risk and change the course of our lives. I will always thank God that I chose the latter because it was also the most rewarding chapter. I'm sharing my personal story in the hope that others may find comfort, perhaps a new perspective, or just a common understanding that we all share many struggles as families and human beings. No life situation is ever so difficult that it cannot be overcome with faith, whatever your belief system. On this very personal journey, I have discovered the power of love, healing, and forgiveness. This experience was and forever will be life-changing.
Thank you so much. Have you written anything else, Susan?
I have. Um, During this caregiving journey, this was actually before In Search of Rainbows, I wrote Optimal Caregiving. It is a guide for managing senior health and well-being. When my dad was struggling with diabetes and, of course, heart disease, I wanted to find other ways to help them. I wanted to be as helpful as I could. So I no longer worked full time. So I started taking classes on nutrition and senior health. And I learned so much. And I was actually able to reverse my dad's diabetes just by his diet and just by taking better care of himself. And the doctors were astounded. They were so grateful. And we, kind of bounced ideas off each other every time I took my dad to the doctor. And we still do. So I thought, again, this is another wealth of information. It was one more way for me to help my parents, and I wanted it to be another way that caregivers could help their loved ones as well. Mm-hmm. So I wrote that book to help others too.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And where can readers find your books?
Well, they can find them on AlzAuthors.com. Mm-hmm. And of course, they are both on Amazon. And I have a website, www.susanlandeis.com.
Thank you so much.
And I do want to say to our listeners, Susan is an amazing graphic artist who does a lot of our memes for our social media. So all of those beautiful words and pictures, she dreams them up and makes them happen for all of us who get to put them out on our socials. So I just want to say, hey, thanks. You're doing a great job for me. I really love it.
Sure is. Makes us look so good.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my way of putting out that message of hope every day that we all struggle with. Sometimes, I know I have heard many times, oh, that's just what I needed to hear today. And that's always what I have in mind whenever I create a graphic. I always hope that it touches somebody or it's just what somebody needed to hear.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks so much. And thank you all for attending Aging and Amazing's Books and Chit Chat with AlzAuthors. We'd love to see you at our next book club discussion on Tuesday, March 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern, when we meet Deborah Tan, author of The Race of Dementia. The title of the book serves as a double entendre. First, there is a race for a cure, and second, there is evidence that suggests Blacks and Latinos will make up nearly 40% of the 8.4 million American families affected by Alzheimer's. Hence, it is literally the race of dementia. You can register for the event in the Books and Chit Chat channel, in the Aging and Amazing community, or by visiting AlzAuthors.com, where you will also find Deborah's story posted on our blog. I also invite you to be among the first to know everything new at AlzAuthors as a subscriber to our weekly newsletter. Sign up at AlzAuthors.com. Then check your inbox each week for our news, introducing our latest author, podcast, special events, and more. And be sure to visit our blog, podcast, and shop at AlzAuthors.com to find more resources for your dementia journey. We've got some lovely gifts for caregivers, including our books and our poetry anthology, as well as some branded clothing and accessories to show your support. And you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, where we will share a wealth of resources for the dementia journey. And remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Thank you so much for being here. And also, please visit our friends at Aging and Amazing. Did you want to say a few words about that, Malika?
Thank you, AlzAuthors. The author was really great. I'm sorry I couldn't show my face today, but thank you so much. And we're just glad for a continued partnership. And my colleagues, Daisy and Kate, I'm sure they the author as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. We'd love to have you. Thank you for listening to Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia, an AlzAuthors podcast. For more details on this episode, please see the show notes. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to it on whichever platform you use to listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information on AlzAuthors, please visit AlzAuthors.com. While you're there, be sure to browse our online bookstore, where you will find hundreds of carefully vetted books on Alzheimer's and dementia. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please email your thoughts on the podcast to AlzAuthors@gmail.com. We are a 501c3 charitable organization, totally reliant on donations to do what we do. If our authors' stories move you, please consider contributing to our cause. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony.
Hi, I'm Susan Landeis of AlzAuthors. If you're listening to this podcast, you may be looking for more support on your dementia journey. Please visit our website at AlzAuthors.com, where you'll find hundreds of carefully vetted resources written by caregivers and professionals in Alzheimer's and dementia care. You'll get knowledge, comfort, and support through books, blogs, podcasts, films, and more. That's AlzAuthors.com. Remember, you are not alone.